Thank you. I understand you'd like to pass over the third example, but you do want to talk about the fourth one, a complaint to the Daily Mail. Again, to be clear, was that Engage's complaint or an individual's complaint?
Yes, this was a complaint by Engage. The article was actually mentioned Engage. It was an article by Melanie Phillips.
Yes, it was directed to your body, so of course you have the right to complain about it. But the piece claimed that you were an extremist Islamic group funded by the government. Statements of a fact and/or opinion with which you strongly disagree.
Yes. The extremist Islamist group, I fear we might not get very far with that. I think to Melanie Phillips, she has a particular worldview in which quite a few groups seem to fall into that category, so I don't think we're going to get very far with that one. But she made a clear error of fact in that story where she claimed that Engage was a body funded by the government. So we wrote to the managing editor at the Daily Mail and made clear that we've never received a penny from the government. We've never applied for a penny from the government. So we wanted first an acknowledgement of the factual error that was in their story, and secondly an apology for making that error. It's been 7 months since this story appeared and since we first complained to the PCC, and it's still, unfortunately, in the process of being resolved. What happens is we complain to the PCC then forwards our complaint onto the Mail writes to the PCC forwards the Mail's response onto us. And it's like a ping-pong game in which the PCC seems to be playing more of a postman role rather than the regulatory body it's supposed to be, and that is of concern. And after 7 months of this ping-pong, we still haven't got the word apology out of the Daily Mail. They're still refusing to they acknowledge they made an error, and because there's a paragraph. We say we want this as an apology, and they keep striking the word apology out of it, and we just. I think that if I was to try and draw blood out of a stone, it might be easier than getting an apology from the Mail, it seems.
Thank you. The Muslim plot to kill Pope. I think we've seen that one before. It's a Daily Express front page. It was built on...
Well, this was astonishing, Mr. J, because this was a front page story. And normally, newspapers are quite careful that if there's an ongoing criminal case and there are allegations against individuals, they will put words in bracket or in speech marks to denote that this is what people are saying rather than a statement of fact. But here there was no speech marks. It was just clear Muslim plot to kill Pope as a statement of fact as opposed to anything else. Mm-hmm. And very quickly it became apparent, I believe within 48 hours or so, that this was a non-story. The police released all the people that had been arrested in connection with this incident without charge. But the Express had run a front page and 2 full inside pages, pages 4 and 5, on this, given over to the story of a so-called Muslim plot to kill the Pope. When it came to a redress for the story, they printed a one-sentence clarification on page 9. Again, I hope the inquiry will consider the way newspapers seek to redress the mistakes they make and the damage they cause, and whether it is in any way commensurate with the harm they're doing with some of these stories.
You don't know the sentence they said, do you?
Unfortunately not.
It's not in the paper?
No, my apologies, sir.
All right.
Okay, maybe the 6th and 7th examples there we'll pass over. I think you want to tell us about a different example which isn't in here, a Christmas is banned headline in the Daily Express.
Yes, this was a headline in the Daily Express, a front page story actually. Christmas is banned, it offends Muslims. And I recall this story because it was one of the few times that I ever actually purchased the Daily Express. And I took this story home, I read it, and there was no mention in the story whatsoever of any Muslim who was saying he was offended by Christmas. It turns out that it was a council in South London which had renamed their festivities and renamed it to something called a Winterval, just to make clear that they were celebrating a number of festivities over a period of time. So we contacted again the Daily Express and got no joy from them, saying this was a headline which they could not substantiate. There was no Muslim quoted to say they were being offended by Christmas. So how could they justify the headline? And to this day, we've had no satisfactory response from the Express or the PCC. The only reasoning I can see is that it would help them shift papers, that it would help their front page become a talking point in all over the UK and get people worked up, get people's backs up. That can, to me, seems the only plausible explanation for a story that had no substance whatsoever. And
that's not quite fair.
Sorry.
Because it does have a substance if the council had done it. But your complaint is slightly different.
Yes, sir. There was no basis for the "It Offends Muslims" headline. And if I can just point out to the inquiry that this particular front page was subsequently used by the far right, the British National Party, on their placards. The actual front page of the Daily Express, with that headline, "Christmas is banned, it offends Muslims," appears on BNP placards now. And it's clear that the far right, the BNP, in the shape of the BNP, are making use of this headline to generate or try to generate support and try to appeal to a wider section of the public for their own agenda, which is a clearly anti-minority one.
I think we've actually found, rather Mr. Patrick Hoskins has found, the one line in the Daily Express in relation to the Muslim plot to kill Pope story. It says, and it doesn't look as if it's hidden away, 6 men arrested and quizzed by counter-terrorism police probing a plot in London to attack the Pope were all released without charge, Scotland Yard said yesterday. That I think was the day after, or perhaps.
They were very keen to highlight the Muslim angle when they were arrested, but when they're released, no word mentioned that these were Muslim men who were released.
Well, that's a very fair point, Mr. Bunglawala. Section 2 of your paper gives examples of successful legal challenges and third-party complaints to the PCC. Unless you specifically wish to, I don't think it's necessary to alight on any of those. But I think what we would like to hear specifically from you, Mr. Bunglawala, is your recommendations, your suggestions for the future, which deal both. We deal with two matters really. One, procedure, how complaints can be made by organisations such as yours, and secondly, the substance.
Yeah. A couple of points, Mr. J. One is we would hope that if the Press Complaints Commission is going to be replaced or reformed, attention will be given to the speed with which the body will deal with complaints. I mentioned earlier that we've been in negotiation with the Daily Mail now for, it seems, 7 months. For a simple apology, for a clear factual error, and we still haven't gotten an apology or a clarification for that story. We question how valuable any correction will be months after the original story has appeared. So one is clearly there needs to be an improvement in the speed by which a body deals with complaints from individuals. Secondly, we have a concern about the makeup of the Press Complaints Commission and the fact that serving editors are often on the committee which adjudicates these complaints, and it just seems to us there seems to be here a conflict of interest here, that when we are complaining about a story which may have appeared in their own newspapers, that they are sitting on a committee that adjudicates the value of these complaints. There must be a better answer. I mean, I believe that Inquiry has heard suggestions that perhaps former journalists should be on such a committee. That seems to us to be an eminently sensible suggestion. Just for another point we would like to make is that often the apologies that are made by these newspapers are very tiny. As we just saw, it was in one case it was one sentence in response to.
That wasn't even an apology. That was merely an update.
Yes, you're quite right. So there was an update on a front-page story that appeared. So we hope that Inquiry will again look at ensuring that when retractions and apologies are made, they are in some way commensurate to the prominence given to the original story and the damage done by the original story. After a while, we have to question, when a paper like the Daily Express or the Daily Star keeps repeating the same mistakes in terms of inaccurate coverage of Muslims and keeps repeating a one sentence or a one paragraph apologies, we have to ask how sincere those apologies are, of what value they are, and whether these newspapers are taking it seriously. So we hope that the Inquiry will look at getting a proper redress for errors that are made.
You mentioned the PCC, but you can't go to the PCC about the Express or the Star, can you?
Unfortunately not, no. As Mr. Desmond made clear in his own, the proprietor of the Daily Express made clear in his own testimony here, he has withdrawn his newspapers from being allowed to be adjudicated by the Press Complaints Commission, which again strikes us as a most mystifying position for us to be in, because the Daily Express and the Daily Star are perhaps two of the most egregious offenders when it comes to stories which are mistaken or incorrect or inaccurate when it comes to reporting about British Muslims. And now the PCC has no jurisdiction over them, which is a very odd situation to be in.
Thank you. Well, that's very clear, Mr. Bunglawala. I don't have any further questions for you, but Lord Justice Leveson may.
No, I think your characterisation of the position is very moderate. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.